peoples of the worldwide federated internet. What's good? As most of you know, I am an information junkie. That can be helpful and sometimes it can be a hindrance. One of the things I struggle with sometimes in my information addiction is when to stop. um, and part of what made me bring this up is I I started studying through the book of Jonah probably about a year ago. It's a small book, but that study led me into some other historical things that just kind of has me at a stopping point with studying that book because I'm looking other things up. But that's one of the books that I want to go through. Coincidentally, one of the shorter books, but it's probably actually going to take a longer time to get through because I want to approach that one different, and I want to go over some of the historical things that tie in with the book of Jonah, historical things that will make the book of Jonah make more sense in its context and will actually add some context to things that have happened in history that seem mysterious. You'd be surprised how many things in the Bible take historical mysteries, and if you add those things in history and combine those things with what the details that the Bible gives us, it actually uncovers some of these mysteries. I know that's neither here nor there. Another one of my crazy intros. Anyway, the book of Exodus chapter 2, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, so Exodus chapter 20, or chapter 2, my bad, chapter 20, and verse 1. And there went a man, and there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was goodly, a goodly child, she hid him for 3 months. Now that word goodly, I looked up, and it means excellently, being of a handsome form, beautiful, graceful, as a goodly person, goodly raiment, goodly houses, pleasant, agreeable, desirable as goodly days, bulky, swelling, affectedly turgid, whatever that word means. I didn't bother looking that up, but you kind of get the idea. And the Hebrew word here is, I believe you pronounce that Tobi, and I have it actually pulled up here on my Bible app. Good, better, well, goodness, goodly, best, merry, fair, prosperity, precious, fine, wealth, beauty, fairer, favor, glad. These are some of the ways in which this word has been translated in other places, and then it goes on for the definition: good, pleasant, agreeable, to the senses. So my estimation is what's going on right here in this instant is Moses was born, and he was a child that right out the gate they saw something about this child is good. There's something about this child that's right. That's the impression I get reading this. I don't know if it only applied to him being a good-looking child. I think there's more to it than that. I think his mom kind of sensed something about him that was unique. verse 3. Uh, and you remember, so if you remember before this in chapter 1, there was a edict put out about putting children that were born of the Hebrews, if it was a male, tossing it to the river, pretty much killing the kid. And of course, the midwives were having none of that. They were like, yeah, we're not doing that. We know what you're saying. That's not what we're doing. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river brink. So she constructed him a small boat, so to speak, and put him in a river and cast him off. Now, I I don't know if she knew what was going to happen, if she figured someone would find him, if, how rough the river was. I don't know any of this, but I would imagine this had to be something that was hard for her to do, but she couldn't hide him anymore. She was kind of between a rock and a hot place, and she didn't know what to do. Um, and so his sister stood afar off to wit what should be done to him. So, clearly they thought somebody would find him, and his sister was there to make sure what was going to happen. They wanted to know what was going to happen to Moses. Well, he's not Moses yet. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. Now, when I saw this, I thought about a verse. I believe it's in the book of Romans, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken about that. But the verse I'm trying to remember to quote: "All things work together for good to them who are the called." Hold on, let me get to the verse. I hate when I'm going to quote a verse and I can't really get it out correctly. Like I'm trying and I'm just like, man, I cannot get this thing out. And I know that probably happens to some of you. Maybe it doesn't. I know some of you smart theologians remember these verses perfectly. And the funny thing is, I've quoted this verse a number of times, but it's Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. The biggest thing there is things work according to his purpose, right? So all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. And I know a lot of people quote that verse and use that verse, and they try to apply that to getting everything they want. And if you actually read the verse, that's not really what is the thought is carrying across in its context. Is more that things are going to work for your good according to God's purpose, not really what you want. And if you love God, then more than likely, whatever it is that you want is actually in alignment with God's purpose. Anyway, I know that's kind of a tangent. So his sister stood afar off, and yeah, the reason I brought that up is how crazy is it? How coincidental is it that the daughter of Pharaoh is the one that comes up and finds this child? That's what would be the odds? Would it be something like 1 in a million? I don't know. I would imagine it'd be some crazy odds. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." So she knew the edict. She knew what was supposed to happen. But check out what she did. Then said his sister, so his sister standing by, right? So she kind of comes up. Sister says to the Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. So she went, got his mom, brought him. Now peep how this works out. This is interesting. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Take this child away and nurse it for me. This is her son, right? And I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. She sends, she has Moses. She does not cast him out, have him thrown to the river and killed. Moses is put into this apparatus she made for him to float on the river, floats off. Pharaoh's daughter finds Moses. His sister comes and says, Do you want me to go find one of the Hebrew handmaids to nurse him? Yeah, go find somebody. She goes, gets his mom. His mom comes up. She says, Hey, I want you to nurse this kid. I'm going to pay you for it. Let that sink in. She cast Moses into this floating device, sends him off, not knowing what's going to happen. He comes back to her that same day, and she's getting paid to take care of him. Wow. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called his name Moses. And she said, Because I drew him out of the water. That name Moses, let me look at my concordance. I'm trying to see where it came from. So it means to draw out. So his name is apropos. Verse 11, and it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out into his brethren and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. Right, so Moses knows where he came from, and he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. All right, so Moses, sees the burden of his brethren. He sees what this Egyptian is doing. He looks around, kills the dude. Verse 13, and when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together, and he said to him that did the wrong, Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? So Moses is trying to be a mediator between his brethren at this point. He's trying to look out for them and be a mediator between the issues they're having. So I imagine, just looking at this, that Moses probably feels a little bit of what's called survivor's guilt, so to speak. Like he's living high on a hog and the rest of his people is struggling. Anyone with any sort of heart would probably struggle in that situation. And he said, Who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killedest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. So he's afraid. They know what he did to the Egyptians. Somebody saw, and he's like, oh, snap, the cat is out the bag. Now, when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. It's amazing if you read through the Old Testament, especially, how often wells come up. This comes up a lot. So this has some significance. I've read some things about what different scholars have said about wells. I don't know, if these things are 100% accurate. They might be, but I haven't looked too deep into it myself. So I'll just leave that there. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the throws to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Ruel their father, he said, How is it that ye are come so soon today? And they said, An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock. So notice they did. Now this is something that I don't think many people pay attention to. How would Moses be mistaken for an Egyptian? He grew up in Pharaoh's house. He was raised by the Egyptians. He dressed like the Egyptians, and his mannerisms probably were akin to Egyptians. This is how he was raised. He would have been very educated, probably more educated than the rest of his brethren, and that's actually important when you think about the penning of the first 5 books of the Bible. Just kind of a side note there. And he said unto his daughters, And where is he? Why is it that ye have left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread. Again, we see all of these things working out, and we see God's provision coming through yet again. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah his daughter. And she bare him a son, and he called his name Gershom. For he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land. And it came to pass in process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up unto God by reason of the bondage. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them. So God hears their cry, and God is getting ready to come through for them. Now, this is particularly important moving forward, because when if you have read through your Bible, read through Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, you know that the people of Israel constantly bickered about what they felt God should do, and how they felt things should be different, and why they thought they were going to die in the desert. And it's like, did nobody remember the things that God did for them, and how he heard them, and how he brought them out of the land of Egypt? And what it makes me realize is, and you see things in the Old Testament, and you see human nature playing out. When I read my Old Testament, when I read the Bible in general, and I see how God deals with man and how man responds to God, I'm like, oh, just like the Bible says, there's nothing new under the sun. These people are reacting just like many of us react. God will do many things in our lives, bless us in many ways, help us in many ways. And as soon as things get hard, what's the first thing we do? We turn around and say, well, man, I wish God would do this for me. I wish God would do that. You might not say that out loud, but that's often what you're thinking. I know that's happened to me. Again, I can't speak for other people. I can only speak for myself. Anyway, y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.